Right, and it's not just 20 years ago, Brian. When Jumana Kidd and Jason Kidd got divorced in 2007, I mean, she claimed that he broke her rib and damaged her hearing by smashing her head into the console of a car. I mean, that is out there.
The other one, the Dallas Mavericks, like within hours of Rick Carlisle endorsing Jason Kidd as their next head coach, they at least, I believe, came to terms with him and hired him as their next head coach. Carlisle said, he coached, I think he was like, I'm the only one who coached both Kidd and Luka, so I can say that both of these guys would be a great fit together. And clearly the Mavericks agree. Dirk Nowitzki is working with them as a special advisor, I believe, and he had experience with Kidd on the 2010-11 title team, so he's bringing that to the table as well. What do you think of the Kidd hire, Morten?
I think you know where I stand on the Jason Kidd hire. I do not like it. First and foremost, I think he's a person that the NBA should distance itself from. Secondarily, I don't think he's a good coach. I think there's a reason that Giannis took a step up after his departure in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
I think he had no clue on how to handle Giannis, what to do with Giannis. He insisted on pushing the point guard label onto Giannis for no particular reason. I think he is a guy who gets power hungry, power grabby. He did so after a single year in with the Brooklyn Nets, then he started angling for more power. So I actually, when I heard this, I went to a website and created a countdown clock.
Did you really?
Yeah, basically saying, you know what, let's give it a year and maybe about a month, and like a year and change. And then at one point we'll hear when that countdown has done. Before then, we will have had either a scandal or we'll have had a Jason Kidd power grab attempt.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a Luka Doncic trade request.
That's a scandal, Brian. That counts under a scandal.
Okay. Yeah, it's like the clock from Independence Day. You don't know what it's for, but when it hits zero, something bad's going to happen.
Yep, exactly. And look, I mean, there are probably Dallas fans out there going, oh, well, we like Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd was there when we won a championship. Jason Kidd was the co-rookie of the year with Grant Hill when we drafted him. Yada, yada. That's great. That's great. But you know what? There's widely available information about him privately that makes me just not interested in having a person like him associated with the NBA and the sport that I cover.
Yeah, so let's get into that because this is going to apply to Portland as well. Yes. So in January of 2001, he was arrested because his wife told police that he hit her during an argument over their son. Right. He pleaded guilty to spousal abuse, was fined $200, and was ordered to take anger management training. So, domestic abuse is not something that should be taken lightly, obviously. I mean, the Mavericks, like, this is very public information at this point. And I think from what I saw when his name started circulating, like, his name's been connected to every coaching search for like the last couple of years at this point.
Yeah. I wonder why. His agency has done a really good job of being in the ear of Adrian Wojnarowski off of ESPN.
Yeah. And I feel like every time his name surfaces, I see someone from the fan base write a blog post about why they should not hire him. And it always comes back not only to the domestic abuse, but also like, yeah, he was not a great coach as well. So it's not even like this guy's a magnificent, like Phil Jackson-esque savant, and we just are blackballing him because of an issue from 20 years ago. It's like, this guy kind of sucked, and then also has this issue that you should not be overlooking by any means. So it's like when there are 30 jobs available, and only 30 jobs available,
right?
Do we have, like, this is the best you can do? And, it's not to say that it won't work out for the Mavericks, but I think, especially for a team, coming off of a major sexual harassment scandal for the past few years, where Mark Cuban pledges to change the culture of the organization. Making your first hire someone with a past history of domestic abuse does not send a great message, not only to women in the organization, but just women in general, or any victims of domestic abuse, male or female.
Right.
So, I think they are deservedly getting raked over the coals for this. And again, maybe it works out. Like, Jason Kidd, I feel like the logic from their perspective is we know what Jason Kidd brings to the table as a player. It's a Hall of Fame point guard.
Right.
We have Luka Doncic, who, if you're going to it's like when you're not going to necessarily get this reference, but NFL teams, when you have an elite quarterback, you're looking for a new head coach, you typically, bring in someone who's either quarterback when he played in the NFL or has a lot of background, like an offensive-minded coach.
Okay, yeah.
It's similar to this. You have an elite point guard in Luka Doncic. You're going to want someone with the same type of mentality. I think that's what Carlisle was referring to as well. But I do think as NBA fans, we should be upfront about the issues that come with this hire. And both for this and the Portland one, which we'll get to in a few minutes, I don't want this to come off. I've seen some people label this as like performative outrage. And I think that's a gross labeling of this. Yeah. Like, we should not be okay with someone with this past getting a premier job and not at least being questioned about it. I hope that in his introductory press conference, someone asks either him or whoever is in charge of the Dallas front office now. I think, Michael Finley and then this Nike executive who they just hired, Nico Harrison. Like, I want someone to get comments on the record of how did you weigh what, positive factors you think Kidd brings to the table with what he has in his past.
Right, and it's not just 20 years ago, Bryan. When Jumana Kidd and Jason Kidd got divorced in 2007, she claimed that he broke her rib and damaged her hearing by smashing her head into the console of a car. That is out there. At the same time, in 2012, he was arrested for driving under the influence. So I think it's not just a question of what he did 20 years ago. That case, the latest case, is less than 9 years old. That, to me, presents a pattern of destruction in a certain way. And so it's not just you're right, the Mavericks should address this, but they shouldn't just address what happened 20 years ago. They should address more than that. They should address character overall. Like, they should try to justify why this is okay. And I want to hear that. I want to hear them try to justify it, because I don't think they can. And in the context of what happened with that organization, especially, I just think this is such a tone-deaf move.
Yeah.
That is, when I heard this, I was flabbergasted. And today, I know this is almost a segue, but it almost sounded like off of a tweet from Damian Lillard earlier, that he more or less declined the opportunity to work with Kidd because of those issues. Mm-hmm. So as soon as we get into the Portland stuff, because there's also, this has not been a banner day for the NBA. And we've said that a couple times on this podcast today. It hasn't been a banner day for X amount of people. But yeah, no, I think you're right. It is important that we, as fans, observers, analysts, whatever, get some answers to this. Because, look, the NBA still has a tendency to, once in a while, bring out Karl Malone. Hey, look at Karl. Are you freaking kidding me? In no way, shape, or form should the NBA be associated with Karl Malone. No way.
Yeah, well, Scoutman just heard that from miles away, and he's going to come DM you later.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Well, I mean, also, too, beyond, like, all those factors very much deserve to be in consideration here. But this is from Tim Cato of The Athletic. It also might cost them Jamal Mosley, who is an assistant coach.
It has cost them, right?
It's expected he's going to depart the franchise. I don't know if it's official. But Doncic had developed a close relationship with him. It sounded like when Carlisle left, like that was the logical choice,
right?
Potentially, but instead, he again, this Tim Cato of The Athletic says he failed to receive the serious consideration he anticipated for the vacant coaching role. And then later on he says, however, it's clear Kidd didn't beat out Mosley as much as he was whisked past him in a preferred lane.
Yeah. So basically, what you're telling me is OKC is gearing up for a Luka offer.
Well, so I do want to touch on that quickly because I know that's going to be again, half facetiously similar to my Bud versus Monty is the worst mismatch in the finals.
Right.
If Luka, as long as Luka signs that extension, Dallas doesn't need to worry.
Right.
Or if they do, it's years down the road. Like we've seen guys force their way out with 1 year left or 2 years left on their contract. He cannot force his way out with 6 years left.
Right.
And even if he starts dogging it like James Harden did in Houston, no, there's no way. You cannot possibly get the value that you would need for Luka Doncic at 22 years old or wherever he is.
Right.
An MVP caliber talent. There's just absolutely no way. So I don't think a trade request is likely. If anything, what will happen is Jason Kidd will flame out and they'll fire him, and then then he'll get more say in the next coach, and then they'll be on the clock. But I don't think this is going to cost them Luka Doncic. What I hope is, again, personal issues aside, which are very much in consideration, but just from an on-court fit, I hope that Jason Kidd has learned from his time in Milwaukee. And, the Lakers people apparently have been raving about him. So maybe being around LeBron the last couple of years and Anthony Davis the last couple of years has helped bring him new perspective, and he's going to be a much better coach as a result. But I just hope we don't waste 2 years of Luka Doncic because they went with a nepotism hire.
Yeah. I think that's going to happen, though.
It might have happened either way because their roster is in such rough shape, especially with Porzingis. But, I don't get the impression that Jason Kidd is going to be a Monty Williams or a Ty Lue.
No, I think this is a clear downgrade. If we're setting aside all the personality issues, I just don't think he's a smart coach. Rick Carlisle, even though he butted heads with Luka, and I made this point on this podcast before, he still appreciated Luka to a great extent. It was a disagreement just off of passion and having their emotions on their sleeves. That does not mean that there isn't a mutual level of respect. That does not mean that there isn't a great sense of shared, let's say, urgency for becoming a better team. I think that was there. I think the reason he resigned, honestly, is because of all of the hoopla happening behind the scenes. As we've learned, Mark Cuban is a meddler, a big meddler. And apparently he does not know exactly who to give the right level of responsibility to. And then even if he does do that, he sort of circles back and inserts himself into the conversation because of his ego. And that might have been adorable when he started out as a new owner, 20 odd years ago, because we didn't see that. Nowadays, it's gotten a little bit old. It's time for a change. And honestly, if I'm Luka Doncic, or if I'm a fan of Luka Doncic, I am worried that the next couple of years are going to be very irrelevant. I think they're going to be somewhat stuck in the mud. And honestly, I wouldn't be entirely shocked if he took the qualifying offer. I wouldn't. If he is desperate enough to get out of Dodge in actually not 2 years time. That would be in 2 years time, but it would be after next year that he could do it. Who knows? I know what he said, though. I understand that he said, what do you think in terms of the extension? But who knows?
He said I don't think he winked and was like, yes, I'm effectively
right. But and then I don't know. It's such a tough situation because then if he gets injured, is that contract going to be there?
Right.
Look, this is where it's so difficult, right? It's so difficult because when you have a guy like that, you would want him to play under the best of circumstances. These are not the best of circumstances. You should, as an NBA organization, really try to mold yourself after your star player. I don't think this is doing that.
Yeah. Yep. Nope. I completely agree. Yeah. All right. So let's just go right into the other one, because this one, the Blazers still have time to back out. This is not final, but multiple reporters, Adrian Wojnarowski, Shams Charania of The Athletic, et cetera, have all reported Chauncey Billups are progressing in contract talks to make him the next head coach of the team. And it's similar to Jason Kidd in some extent, where the guys who work with him currently have raved about him. You know, Ty Lue especially has gone on and on about how great of a job Chauncey Billups has done, how he deserves to be a head coach. So, as of a few weeks ago, I don't think this was as well known as it is now. And for those of you who do know it, kudos, but we want to bring it up because I don't think everyone who isn't on NBA Twitter all the time is necessarily aware of this.
Right.
In 1997, a victim, Jane Doe, accused him and a few of his teammates at the time on the Boston Celtics, Antoine Walker and Ron Mercer, of rape. Billups said that the woman initiated and performed consensual oral sex on him in the car, which was the full extent of their sexual interactions. She said they went back to, I think it was Walker's house, and all three of them had non-consensual sex with her.
Right.
That's all we know in terms of, it is much like most sexual assault cases. It's he said, she said, and we don't have clear evidence either way. But it is an allegation of rape, and I think as he started catching more steam in these coaching searches, it became more and more well known. I also want to read you Damian Lillard's tweet today about it. Because a lot of people, when this news broke, were pretty upset, and deservedly so. So someone said this was on Dame. They were always going to hire exactly who he wanted. And Dame said, "Really? I was asked what coaches I like of the names I heard, and I named them. Sorry I wasn't aware of their history. I didn't read the news when I was 7 or 8 years old. I don't support those things, but if this the route y'all want to come at me, say less." So, how do you digest all that, Mort?
Well, for one thing is, so our buddy Mason Ginsberg said something interesting. He said, if I'm going to suggest to my company that they make a hire, I would be responsible for also knowing what's the history of the person that I am caping for. Mm-hmm. I don't think NBA players will ever do that, but I actually agree with Mason that if they're going to basically, let's say, stick out their neck for a guy, that it's important who you're sticking your neck out for. Mm-hmm. I don't blame Dame for not reading the news at 7 or 8. Nobody does.
Right. Well, that's right. Again, most of us didn't know about this a month ago.
Right. Absolutely. But then, the thing for me is, if you're caping for someone, then sure, I think it would be fine if you just take the time and went back and okay, let's see who the person is that I'm caping for, that I'm saying okay to. But I'm also understanding that the responsibility doesn't fall on Dame, ultimately speaking. It's the organization. The organization is hired to do background. Yes. No, the organization hires someone to do background. My apologies. It's past midnight. It's late.
Yeah, you're good.
And if an organization doesn't do that, then it's on. And if they get that, they get a report back detailing these things, and they still go, well, it's fine. Mm-hmm. And it's on them. So I can see it from both sides when it comes to Dame. Yes, it would have been great if he did know, because it did seem like that he didn't want any part of Jason Kidd because of that reputation. So that suggested to people, myself included, that, Dame wants to be socially conscious. I think he is. I mean, overall, when I picture Dame Lillard personally, he's a guy who really seems like he has the finger on the pulse. So I think that was what hit people by surprise a little bit. Him basically saying, hey, you know what? I didn't know. Yeah, I mean, I get it. At the same time, I still feel like, yeah, but it would have been nice if you knew. Like, it would have been pretty good, because then you could have said no, and then it wouldn't have been an issue. But look, this is such a multi-layered discussion, and I really don't want to make it a Damian Lillard issue. To be honest with you, I want to make this a Portland Trailblazers issue. I want this to make it a Neil Olshey issue, more than I want to make it a Dame issue.
Yeah. I mean, I think the last part of his response was not great. I'm sure his PR people agree. Like,
say less was not a great way to end that discussion.
No, it was not. But yeah, you're right. This isn't on Dame. Like, you hire people to do a background check, like in any job, not just NBA coaches, but like any job interview process. Like, the last part is doing a background check on someone. If something comes up, Chauncey was not arrested, as best I can tell. He was not convicted of anything, so it's not like he has a felony on his on his record. But like, this would pop up. All you have to do is a Google search to find out about it. So.
And by the way, can we also just acknowledge that a medical examination was conducted and revealed injuries to this woman?
Yes.
What's it called? My apologies if it's a crude term, but rape kit, is that correct? Is that what? Yeah. Okay. So I think that matters. I think it's important that we also detail that it's not just he said, she said, or she revealed something years later. Like, there was a medical examination.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, this is where it's similar to Kid. Like, where do you draw the line? Like, the NBA has had this problem for years now, not just with coaches, but like Kobe back in the day, Derrick Rose. Yep. Fans got behind both guys after these allegations come out. Like, does Chauncey Billups never just deserve to work again because he got accused of this 25 years ago? I don't think anyone's going that far. Does he deserve to be one of, in this exclusive fraternity where there are only 30 jobs available, 30 high-profile jobs? That, I think you can make a pretty strong argument that no. It looks like Blazers Edge put out an article this morning with the title, "In Their Own Words, 5 Women Offer Thoughts on Chauncey Billups' Hire." And it's just clear how disgusted all 5 of them are with the organization right now. And
I read that. I mean, I don't know if you read it, but I was like, I was really moved. I think you should all go read that.
Yeah, it's a really, really good piece. And, I think this is, again, it's like something that the organization, similar to Dallas with Kidd, not just, how his past will influence people's feeling toward the hire and like what it means for Jamal Mosley, all that stuff. You have to think about the backlash here if you're Portland, and like, is Chauncey Billups so much of an upgrade over whoever else was in the running, Becky Hammond in particular? Is he so much of an upgrade over her that you're willing to alienate a large portion of your female fan base? Because that's the risk you're taking here. And I like, professionally for Billups and for Dame, much like for Kidd and Luka, like, I hope, I don't even know if I want to say I hope it works out. Like, it's just it's so tricky. But man, I mean, it's certainly not a choice that I would make if I were in charge of an NBA team. And if the Sixers were interviewing these guys, I'd be equally outraged. And I think anyone who thinks people are just putting on a face and like pretending to be mad about this, again, just go listen to women who are very, very pissed, and rightfully so. Like, they deserve a seat at the table here more than any of us do.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that was actually going to be my next point. And it is, technically you and I we shouldn't be having this conversation. This should not be two men sitting and talking about the long-term implications, because you know what? We are privileged as hell in that regard. It is not men who are primarily in fear of being assaulted sexually. It is overwhelmingly, almost exclusively, women. So the message that this sends to half the public is dreadful. This is one of those, well, you know what? I don't really care. It's fine. It's men that watches the sport. Rah, rah, rah kind of decisions. Like, it's not taking into account half the population. It's not taking into account the literally millions of women alive today who have suffered or gone through sexual assault. And then you could argue, well, we don't know if he did it. Sure. But it's the message that it's sending. Someone who has been accused of that still matters. And I understand, to some extent, people saying, well, you know what? You also can't blackball someone if you don't know if someone did it or not. And again, it's a multi-layered discussion. Yeah. But have some respect for the many, 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 unfortunately, women who have gone through this, and understand that what you're doing is directly, absolutely directly affecting them. It sends such a poor message out there.
Yeah. I mean, any survivor of sexual assault who is a Blazers fan, or even not, I mean, just follows the NBA and now has to know that one of the 30 head coaches is going to have this accusation against him.
Right.
Like, what is that going to do? Like, I can't imagine the upside outweighs the downside here. And I, much like with Dallas and Kidd, I hope in Billups' introductory press conference, if they do end up hiring him, I hope someone asks him about this. I hope someone asks Neil O'Shea about this. Like,
I hope several people ask them.
Yeah, like, they deserve to be on the record. Yeah. Like, this is not something that you get to hide away from. You know, like, I don't think the Blazers, when they announce Billups' hiring, are going to bring this up or issue a statement about this. They should, to be proactive, but I think they're going to try to sweep it under the rug as best as possible.
I don't think they're having a press conference, Bryan.
Yeah, well, every team, when they introduce a head coach,
I think that's their way of being progressive.
Yeah.
If you catch my drift. I think they're just going to be issuing a statement. The Blazers have hired, and that's it. Right. Because that's how you skirt around the issue.
Yeah, they'll go into his professional background, and that's it. They're not. You know what?
And that's the thing. This is what disappoints me. It's the league was trending the right way for years. I think the league just took a significant step back. Yeah. When compared to the WNBA, which I continuously am in awe of from a social issues perspective, my God, is the NBA lacking behind. Yeah. I love the NBA. I built my life off of basketball. If it hadn't been for the NBA, I wouldn't be sitting with a full-time job right now as a basketball content manager. So I am very emotionally invested in the NBA. This frustrates me. I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I know people in my network who have been a victim of sexual assault. I know several, actually. Not going to sit here and name them because that wouldn't be proper, but I know what they've dealt with. All of them. It's and for some sports fans to basically say, well, that doesn't matter because maybe this guy can get us more wins. Yeah. Who the fuck cares about wins if it comes at that price?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you said it well. It's a big step back for the NBA.
It really is.
I hope the reaction, I've been encouraged at least by how many people have voiced their displeasure with both of these hires. And I hope that continues to happen. And we will continue to speak out about both of these guys. I hope that other organizations around the league are taking notice of this.
Yes. That's a good way of actually ending this on a high note. I agree with you. Let me just I'm sitting upright because I'm getting excited now. You're absolutely right. You know what? The discourse has changed over the past decade plus. I mean, back in the day, it was all fanhood, men fanhood, rah, rah, rah. It doesn't matter about rape accusation. Everyone's had a rape accusation, rah, rah, rah. You know what? Nowadays, that's not the same. We are seeing so many men step up and say, this is not okay. We actively need to speak out about this. That is a positive development. And you know what? You know what scares me just a little bit, though? Like, you and I just having this conversation, we are going to lose listeners who we had for years just by having this conversation. And those people, those are the issues that I have with them. Those are the people that needs to be somewhat just removed from this entire conversation. Like, let's have more people get up on that platform, use the platform and say, this is not okay by any stretch. And I also want to say, in football, soccer, this has also been an issue. Fanhood has been very, very vile for many, many years, but we're seeing a shift in that sport as well. There are harsher and harsher reactions to players who are racist or who have done something, like accused of rape, accused of spousal abuse, or any of these things. We are seeing a counter reaction now, and it sort of goes back to this ideology that was developed after the killing of George Floyd, or the murder of George Floyd, which was, it's not enough to be, against racists. You need to be aggressively anti-racist, for example. That we need to have the same opinion here, and more men do. And I think that is encouraging. I like that. It feels nice. I remember when you and I have talked about this so many times before, and we got called out on Twitter all the time. Like, oh, why are you guys focusing on that? Now we're not. Now we're hearing a lot more people, men, who actually said, oh, I'm so glad you brought this up, guys. Thank you. Which, dude, that's amazing. I really like to see that development. That warms my heart, man. It's so nice to see that we are getting together on a higher level than before. And yeah, there are still dirtbags out there who believe otherwise, but those voices just needs to be drowned out.
Yep. Completely agree.